Hello everyone, and welcome to this month's webcast on Zap Physical Inventory. My name is Chris Siebold, and I will be your presenter today. Well, we are once again quickly approaching the end of another calendar year, and for many of you, that means time for physical inventory. I hope today's webcast will be useful for you on the Zap processes for physical inventory. We hope just to give you a quick little refresher on the processes of what you need to go through, and we'll go ahead and get started. Now, the physical inventory process operates through a series of programs that consist of batch creation, optional paper count sheets, optional count management, optional count reset, some variance reporting and analysis, and finally some batch deletion. To get to these menu options, we're going to choose the Zap Warehouse Management System and then choose Physical Inventory. You can see on the bottom right-hand portion of my screen, those menu options are then listed on each one of those processes, and we're going to go into those processes in greater depth here very shortly. Now, I would once again like to point out that today we are covering the Zap Physical Inventory. One great advantage of using Zap Physical Inventory is that this process dynamically freezes the inventory via a snapshot of shelf inventory and work-in-progress warehouse activities at the initiation of the count process. So when you actually scan the location, that's when it would freeze that certain area. This eliminates a manual freeze step, which allows for the passing of time between the batch creation and the actual initiation of the count. Now, this will enable all the count processes to take place while normal warehouse activities such as your picking and your receiving and shipping, whatever it may be, those can still continue during the physical inventory count process. Another great advantage of using the Zap Physical Inventory is the time that can be saved. Many of our customers who are on Zap Physical Inventory can do an entire warehouse in just a matter of a few hours, saving a great amount of time for your warehouse workers when it comes to actually counting your products out in your warehouse. To begin the physical inventory count process, we first need to come in to create a batch. To do this, we're going to choose the physical inventory create batch menu option, and then we'll come into the following screen. From this screen, we're going to come in and choose a warehouse, and then we have three options. We can either choose 1, enter cycle codes, 2, enter location range, or 3, we can go down and put in a single item. To begin, we're going to discuss cycle codes and how that count works. Now, cycle counting will perform counts on designated items or group of items that have similar cycle codes that are already established. Now, these establishments can be set up in the item balance file. This is a very efficient manner for inventory counting, as these cycles can be strategically assigned to items having very specific characteristics and therefore can be counted on a periodic basis as deemed necessary by company policy. So if you take a look on the left-hand side, some examples of some cycle codes set up could be cycle code 01 for fast-moving or high-dollar items. These items may be counted one time a week. Cycle code V1 for vendor 1 product line counted one time monthly per vendor agreement. Or cycle code C8 for customer 8 consignment inventory, and these items may be counted one time monthly per contract. We also encourage that cycle counting obviously to be performed for more than just at one time a year at physical inventory time. We would highly encourage you to do this on a regular basis, whether that be weekly or monthly or quarterly, whatever it may be, just to be able to keep a better idea of where your inventory is, what's moving in, what's moving out, and exactly what it is that you have out there in your warehouse of a specific product. Another option for counting physical inventory is to create batches based on location. Now, location counts may include a single location, it may include multiple locations, or it even can support full yearly physical count of all locations. And now, batches are created for any location specified, even if the location is empty. Those locations are still going to appear on your count. Now, it's important to note that location blocking will not affect any type of physical inventory count process. All locations, except for staging locations, are eligible for counting regardless of their block status. Finally, the last way that we can create a batch is based off of a single item. Now, item counts are simply a means to count a specific item number at any given time for any specific reason. An example of this might be inventory reconciliation error, where the computer balance and the actual inventory in the warehouse balance are in disagreement. This count will reconcile the differences and ensure that the on-hand balance is restored to the proper value. Now, whether we choose to create a batch based off of a single item, or if we choose to create a batch based off of a cycle count, these batches are created only if on-hand inventory is found for the item or items with the submitted cycle code. If no inventory is found, a batch is still created for audited purposes, but it indicates no inventory to count. The batch should then just be simply deleted. One exception to this rule is if an item has a primary location established. In this case, a count batch will be created even if no on-hand inventory is found. In this case, we would still want your warehouse worker to go out to the location and check just to make sure no inventory has shown up in that specific location. So once a selection has been made, a batch has been created and accepted, an assigned batch number is displayed on the screen, and we can use that later on in our physical inventory process. Now, you do have the option to print inventory count sheets if you would choose to do so. Depending on the type of physical inventory batch that you chose, whether that be single item, location range, or cycle code, the count sheets will print the items or the locations for counting. Write-in entries are provided for situations where unexpected inventory may be found as a result of the count. When you get to the screen, you will first go in and choose a warehouse, and then you will enter that batch number that I talked about that you would receive once accepting your batch in the previous Create Batch screen. You then have two options down below. The first is Location Page Break. This field will create a page break upon each new location to be counted in the batch. In essence, this will create separate count sheets by location should you expect to have multiple counters working on the same batch or whatever your situation may be. Secondly, you have the option to print barcode labels. This will create and print the count sheets with barcodes to assist in the manual entry of the counts. Say if the scanner devices would be available on workstations that would be entering these counts in. This option, however, does require special printer capabilities to handle the barcode fonts. The Count Manager is another optional warehouse management tool that allows for the prioritization and assignment of locations to the warehouse staff. This process allows for tighter controls to the Count Manager as it identifies individual assignment statuses based on location. To get to this specific menu option, we're going to go to the PI Count Manager. When we get into the screen, we will choose a specific warehouse that we're working in, and we will also enter that batch number that we created in our first screen. We can then say if we want to view only unassigned locations or if we want to view only uncounted locations. And then we can assign this to specific teams, shifts, or job responsibilities if we would choose to do so. If we would want to assign it to just a specific group of people, maybe 3 or 4 people, we could set those up in a specific team under the Zap user profile records. We could then enter their team number, team code, whatever it may be, into that box, and we can assign this this batch to that specific team. We could also assign it to any shift that we want to, or a job responsibility, whether it be picking, receiving, or both. If we would decide not to assign the badge to a specific team, shift, or job responsibility, we could hit enter and go into the next screen where we can assign locations to specific selected counters. In the selected counter field, we would enter the user name or the user ID for the specific user that we want to pick these locations, and then we could drop down below and place X's next to each location that we want them to pick. If we'd hit enter then and press F2 to accept, those specific locations would be assigned to that selected counter. Furthermore, if we wanted to assign from one location to another, again, we could put the user ID of the counter into the box, and then right below that, in the assign from location and to location, we could put in the range of locations there and hit F2 and assign those locations to that specific counter. This information then would be available on the scanner gun of these users, which we will go ahead and take a look at now. I've now switched over to Axon Link to simulate the screens that would be seen on the scanner gun by the counter when counting a specific item location. For those of you who aren't familiar with DPS Axon Link, this is our graphical user interface that we've created for our software. If you'd like to learn more about Axon Link or would like a demo of Axon Link, please feel free to reach out to your DPS sales representative or your DPS SSA, and we would be more than happy to talk with you about DPS Axon Link. But moving forward, I came into what would be the scanner gun for a counter, and I'm going to go into menu option 7, which would be physical inventory, and press enter. And I can see all the batches that have been created out there on the system. I'm going to go in and select a batch right now by entering the line number. And then I can get to a screen where I can look at my locations, or I could look at batch locations. If I would choose batch locations, all of the locations assigned to this specific batch would appear. But in this case, I want to see the locations that were assigned just to me. So I'm going to choose option number 1, which is my locations. Once I choose option 1, I can see that I've been assigned 4 different locations to count. At this point in time, I'm going to enter the line number to choose a specific location. And once I do, it's going to want a location. Now I'd like to point out everything that's highlighted in black would be what the user would actually scan with the scanner gun. Again, since I'm on my laptop PC, I'm having to type in the information, but all this information would be scannable for your user. So I'm going to put in the location. And once I do, I press enter, and then it tells me the item that it would want me to scan. So it wants me to scan a item, and then it wants me to enter a unit of measure. I'm going to enter my unit of measure of eaches, and then it wants my quantity. I will say I have 50, that I counted 50 eaches in this specific location. And once I press enter, it takes me back and says that yes, now a item has been counted. If needed, a count can be reset in physical inventory. To do so, you can go into the PI reset counts. When we get in, we would choose a warehouse, and then you would enter the batch number of the count that you're wanting to reset. You can reset this then based off of item, or you can reset this based off of location. Now you may need to do a recount or a reset of a specific count due to the fact that there is a variance that shows up on the variance report, which we will talk about here very shortly. It could be as well that your counter may have lost count, or they're questioning their accuracy of the count that they did. Once reset, a count can be then assigned back to the exact same counter, or it can be assigned to a new counter for clarification and comparison purposes. The Zap Inventory Variance Report will assist in the process of analyzing variances between actual counts and frozen counts. Inventory costing is also reported to provide for cost justifications for potential recounts. Host, on-hand, and quarantine item balance quantities may also print on the report for comparison or analytical purposes. If your company uses serial or lot tracking, the individual serial lot numbers may print on the details section of the report as well. To get to the report, we're going to choose option 7 in my case for PI reset counts. And when we get into the screen, like many other of our screens, the very first item we're going to choose is our warehouse. We can then drop down and choose sequence, and that will print the variance report by either item, batch, item description, or cycle code item, whatever you put into that field. To print, we can have one of two options. We can either put an A in, and that will print all items, whether there's a variance or not, or we can print only those items or batches that have a variance associated with them. For edit update, if we choose edit, all this is going to do is print out the report so we can view and analyze the data. If we choose U, this will not only print out a report for us to view and analyze, but it will also update your host system. At the bottom, we can choose a specific batch if we would choose to do so to see the variances for a specific batch or set of batches, or we can leave that section blank and choose all batches. Once we have all our selections put into place, we can then move on to printing out our variance report, which an example is on the next screen. When analyzing our variance report, there's a lot of information on here that can be very valuable to you. We can come in, we can see that we have our item number, in this case A item. We can see our location and the batch that this location was associated with. If there was a lot or serial tracking information, we could see that information here. We can see what was counted, frozen, and the variance associated with that. We can see the cost associated with missing those, and then the extended cost of our variance. The final option of the Zap Physical Inventory process is to delete batches. Deleting a batch will inactivate the batch and stop all future processing for the batch. The DPS Zap File Purge process will remove the records from the files. To choose this option, we will go to Physical Inventory Delete Batches. And once we do, we will come in, once again select a warehouse, and then we can select a specific batch, or we can leave that option blank and we can delete all batches that we have created. This brings us to the conclusion of this month's webcast. I hope that you found this useful and that you'll be able to refer back to this webcast in the coming months when your company decides to do your physical inventory for the year. As always, if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact your DPS SSA. We are more than willing to help you out in anything that you may need. In the coming months, we'll have some other great webcasts coming up. On October 15th, we will have GL Budgeting Made Easier. On November 19th, DPS Development 2014 Recap and 2015 Plans. And finally, to round out the year, on December 17th, the webcast will be on year-end processing. Again, I'd like to thank you for your time and attention today. Please stick with us here for a couple moments. We are going to get situated over here. And if you have any questions, please use the chat feature in GoToMeeting. We'll be glad to answer any questions you may have. Again, thank you, and I hope you all have a great day.